I will tell you the truth, the way the truth sits in my chest, like a calabash of water balanced on the head through a crowded market, steady, trembling, yet refusing to spill. My name is Isatu. My skin carries the same dark shine as rainy season earth after the first storm. My voice has the weight of kola nut and the softness of ripe mango. If you are listening, come closer. Hear the small sounds, the ceiling fan ticking, the kettle sighing, the muezzin's call, threading the morning, the far laughter of children chasing a tire down our street in banjo. I want you to feel the heat in my kitchen when onions hit hot oil, to smell the pan butter and thyme, to see the way afternoon light breaks itself into squares on the tile. I want you to know I did not begin as thunder. I began as a girl who learned to read the air and keep going. When I first met Ibrahima, he stood like a proverb, simple but holding meaning that kept unfolding. He was not a loud man, calm, well-pressed, his suit crisp like new paper, his shoes polished so bright the city could see itself and adjust its posture. He managed a bank branch and managed it the way a careful farmer manages rain, not by shouting but by timing, respect, and knowing when to wait. I, on the other hand, was fire in a glass, international NGO, women's health, policy briefs by day, community clinics by weekend, flights that stitched my name across different time zones, until jet lag became another scarf I wore. At first, our love was loud with joys. We prayed together, we cooked and danced. Oh, we danced, elbows knocking, spices talking, music rising like steam. We were that kind of couple people pointed to and said, "See? Balance," without knowing that even the best calibrated scale tips. If you keep loading the same side, the city was busy and beautiful and cruel in the usual ways of cities. One by one, my days filled with grant reports, fieldwork, policy panels, urgent calls from a clinic where a girl had fainted, a mother who needed blood, a midwife who asked for more gloves than we had. One by one, his evenings settled into a quiet, where he sat with the news long enough for it to cool. I could hear that quiet even when I wasn't home. It lived in the shoes he lined up by the door, in the plates he washed and left to dry, in the way he learned to cook for one. "Babe, are you coming home early?" he would ask, voice steady, not accusing, not pleading, only measuring. "I'll try," I would say, and try became a small boat crossing an ocean of tasks. When the suggestion to hire help entered our home, it arrived like sensible rain. "Let's get a maid," I said, half tired, half hopeful, more practical than romantic in that moment. The agent brought a girl the way the river brings a seed, small, quiet, with its future already arguing beneath the shell. They called her Cedar, cornrows neat, eyes wide with village light, a long blue skirt, a pink blouse, a voice that folded itself before every sentence. She greeted us with both hands and a bow. Some stories enter your life through the front door, respectful, properly announced. Others slip in like a stray cat, rubbing your leg, eating your scraps, learning the map of your house in the dark. Cedar worked as if work was a prayer she had promised to sing to the end. She rose before the sun, turned our compound to cleanliness, cooked oats with fried plantain, to give strength for a long day, she said, smiling like she was serving her mother. I thanked her and meant it. I did not stop to measure the other thing, the way gratitude can be a small gate through which intimacy, even the wrong kind, quietly passes. I did not notice how Ibrahima's questions to her grew from, "Do you need anything?" to "peppery or mild," and how their small laughter began to thread itself across the living room, like a new curtain I had not chosen. It was the kind of change that arrives with the patience of ants. A sugar grain here, a sugar grain there, and one day you turn and find your bowl full of marching. Sometimes I blame the laptop's cold light for how she and I drifted. Sometimes I blame the righteous weight of the work I carried. Women bleeding without pads. Girls choosing between school and survival. Clinics with electricity that blinked like uncertain hope. But if I am holding a mirror to myself, I will say it plain. I became a bank of answers, a lighthouse for strangers, and forgot the simple art of sitting on our own carpet to talk, as if time was ours to spend. I became the woman who ate and slept in the same breath that read policy briefs, who kissed a forehead and returned to keyboard clatter, whose eyes were full of the world and too empty of the home that waited. I did not see the small glances. I did not hear the new tone she reserved for him, that soft feather voice of saying, "You deserve more," as if she had measured the more and found herself equal to it. I did not notice how cortisol makes a man's shoulders slope, how loneliness turns a ring into a silent question. I did not catch the draft at the window, the way temptation smells like fruit just past ripe, easy to bruise, easier still to eat, but the spirit that lives in the bones of my mothers does not sleep. It is the drum my grandmother heard, even when there was no visible drummer. It is the way a bird can sense rain before the first cloud is born. In Dhaka, a whole ocean away, a pressure gathered behind my eyes. I closed my laptop, stood at the window, and the city's lights blurred. My hands went cold. "God, what is this?" I asked. But God answered in the old way, through instinct, through the body. I flew home earlier than planned. When I opened the door, the house wore a new smell. Warm stew. Laughter threading from the kitchen. I saw 2 cups on the table. One had a lipstick I did not own. My face did not move. Inside me, a continent shifted. The next days were windless. I carried myself with a stillness that frightened even me. I worked. I smiled. I slept beside my husband and counted his breaths, not as a wife but as a witness. Then, like Harmattan finally arriving, the air in my chest became one long warning. I went home at an hour that did not belong to me. I opened a door that should have stayed shut. Let me spare you the exact picture. It was the kind of sight that breaks sound. In that room, I saw betrayal wearing my bedsheet. I saw a man I loved become a stranger in a single blink. And I saw a girl who had memorized my house faster than I had memorized her. I am not here to make my rage pretty. I am not here to dress it in the language of calm. A stool flew from my hand before my mind finished naming it. Words found my mouth that my softer self had never learned. He leapt in front of her, took the blow that was not for him, and then the smallest thing shattered me. The way he said, "Don't touch her," as if I were danger and she was home. I felt a part of me close its door and go dark. He looked at me in that moment like I was the problem he could solve by talking slowly. I looked at him like he was a house on fire, and I was finally remembering where the water lived. What I did next, I do not tell like a boast. I tell it like a scar. Our mothers' tongues say some storms are better avoided than survived. I did not avoid mine. I let fury call men who do not ask for context. The door opened to a kind of silence that hums with threat. I sat with my legs crossed. A glass of red in my hand I did not drink, and watched consequences move through my living room like a hard season. I will not choreograph that moment for you. It is enough to say a line was drawn, and the message was written in a language that leaves no room for misunderstanding. When the house went quiet again, when the dust settled in the shafts of light, when the men's footsteps had gone back into the street and the girl's sobs were thin with disbelief, I told her to gather her things. The gate closed behind her, as if the hinge had been waiting for this release. I picked up my bag and my day. I went to work. This is where some people will judge me and be right. This is where others will judge me and be wrong. This is where truth is an overcrowded car and everybody insists on sitting up front. If you only hear that I did a terrible thing, you will be right. If you hear that betrayal makes saints and sinners share a face, you will be closer to knowing me. I do not ask you to excuse me. I ask you to understand that brokenness has a way of mistaking punishment for safety. I ask you to understand that I was not trying to be God. I was trying not to die. Ibrahima came home at his usual hour, looking for sweetness. He had trained to call him Daddy. Calling through the house like our home was a playground I had left unlocked. He did not find her. He found me, reading a fashion magazine as if the world were not mid-clasp. Did you check her room? I asked him, my voice so calm it frightened us both. He went to his knees slowly, not because he loved me, but because fear finally sat down in his chest. He begged in the language of men who love their comfort more than they love the hand that made it possible. And then he asked what he really wanted to know. Had I done something? I smiled with all the old calm I had ever had and said the truest thing available. If I had, what would you do? Let me tell you about vows. People think the important part is for better. They dress it in flowers, in gold rings, in photographs we pass around to prove we were once capable of immaculate beginnings. But the part that separates children from adults is for worse. Worse has a smell. Worse has a key to your house. Worse has your spouse's laugh in its pocket. Worse sits at your table and takes the bigger piece of meat unless you teach it manners. I told him I would not be twice a fool. First in my absence, again in my presence, watching him make a home out of my humiliation. I told him the next time he put me where options are collected like coins, me or her, marriage or thrill, I would show him a version of myself, built from every woman I had ever defended at a clinic, every girl I had ever held, while her heart made a noise it had no word for. I meant it. He wept. I did not. He spoke of loneliness, like it was a good excuse. I spoke of work like it had been my betrayal. We stood on opposite banks of the same river and threw words like stones. Finally, the water itself grew tired of our splashing and lay still. I am not perfect, I said, hearing the old softness in my voice return like a bird to a house it once loved. I have been far away even when I was here. I have been faithful to the world and unfaithful to our little room. But do not mistake my occupation for the end of my heart. And because we are stubborn people, we sat on the same couch, hand in hand, two people who had broken something and now wanted to try the long, clumsy art of repair. Repair is not a speech. Repair is a chore chart, a calendar, a shared password, an alarm at 7 p.m. that says, drop the phone. Repair is rice cooked together, not delivered, a road trip to visit his mother, a Sunday where the laptop stays zipped, and the only report I file is to the body I have starved of undistracted attention. Repair is boundaries like fences, not to keep love out, but to keep predators from entering to graze. We learned to talk for real again. We learned our fight language without using our hands or borrowing the cruel mouth of strangers. We learned the small ceremony of apology. Learned to say, I did this, not if you felt that. We learned to be husband and wife again in a way that was neither nostalgia nor denial. We learned because learning was cheaper than losing. Sometimes, late at night, the house breathes the same quiet that once made him betray himself. I lie awake and listen. And when I feel the old anger creep like cold under the door, I remember the woman I do not want to be again. I do not want to be a storm that hires thunder. I want to be rain that knows where to fall. I turn to him and put my hand on his chest and ask him something small. What song is stuck in your head? Did that tailor call back? And conversation untangles the knot the night was tying. Sometimes he reaches for me first. Sometimes he prays aloud in a voice that sounds like it is learning how to be honest without being afraid. Sometimes we just breathe and the old home returns. The one with kitchen dances, with plantain sizzling, with laughter that does not audition for anybody else. As for Cedar, I do not wish her the kind of ruin that equals entertainment. I wish her long hours in a mirror she can bear to look into. I wish her a work that is honest, and a love that does not invite her to be small. I wish her a memory that burns enough to warn, but not enough to destroy. I wish her a life outside our story. I wish her the wisdom of knowing that a woman's best future cannot be stolen from another woman's table. The girls I work with teach me this every day. How to leave a bad chapter without burning the whole book. Banjo remains itself. Taxi horns arguing theology. Vendors preaching the gospel of their goods. School children singing their times tables like a favorite chorus. In the evenings, the sky becomes a page and swallows write their cursive across it. Saturdays, we take long walks to the market where fish stare up with silver eyes and tomatoes pile like prayer beads. He carries the heavy things without me asking. I haggle as if mercy depends on it. We come home with our bodies smelling of pepper and sun. On the best nights, music stitches the kitchen to the living room, and our feet remember steps they once forgot. Sometimes I cry while we dance, not from sorrow, from the holiness of ordinary things restored. People will ask me if I regret what I did. I will answer like this. I regret the part of me that believed violence could protect love. I do not regret refusing to be erased. I regret how quickly rage can borrow your hands. I do not regret learning that my marriage is either a garden we weed together or a yard the neighborhood goats will happily ruin. I regret how slow I was to notice the man I loved was starving for us. I do not regret the work that feeds me, only the way I once let it eat me. Hear me well, when a woman says, "This is my house," she is not talking about walls and deeds. She is speaking of the space she has held with her body, her cooking, her income, her tenderness, her fierce little alarms going off all day to keep a family from collapsing. She is saying, "I will not go quietly from this room I built," not because pride needs a throne, but because love needs a witness who will not be moved by the first wind. I said it, and I stand by it. But I also say this, my house is bigger now. It is big enough for two flawed people to sit and admit what the other already knows. It is big enough for our laughter to return, without echo finding any emptiness to multiply in. It is big enough for my work and his work, and the work we only do together. If you are listening and you have been hurt, I am placing cool water in your hand. If you have caused hurt, I am placing a towel on your shoulder. If you are the girl at the gate, eyes wide, dreaming of a life that does not belong to you, I am placing a mirror before your face and praying you recognize the woman you could be without stealing anyone's peace. And if you are me, dark-skinned, strong, tired, stubborn, tender, a whole choir living in one throat, know this. There is a way back to yourself that does not require you to become a villain in your own story. There is a way to say never again and mean from now on at the same time. Tonight the fan ticks, the kettle sighs, the city hums itself to sleep. Ibrahima is folding the laundry while humming something off-key, and it is the most romantic thing I have heard in months. I am closing my laptop before the urge to prove myself to strangers returns. The mangoes on the counter are freckled and perfect. The floor is cool under my feet. The house smells like time and forgiveness. Come morning, we will cut fruit and share it like communion. We will step into the day separately and return as one. We will keep our promises, not as a performance but as a practice. And when music finds us again, we will dance in the kitchen, clumsy, grateful, alive. Our shadows stitching themselves back together on the tile, as if the light itself has decided to stay. I will tell you how the morning after a storm looks when it decides to stay. The curtains hang with a tired weight. The house smells of old argument and new resolve. The mirror holds your face like a witness who will not lie for you. I woke to that kind of day, the air thick with the echo of what I had done and the shape of the woman I still wanted to be. I made tea, not because I was thirsty, but because some rituals rescue you from yourself. Boil, pour, breathe, Outside, Banjo shrugged into traffic. Inside, I folded my anger like cloth and put it in the back of a drawer. I pray I never open again. We began the slow work that does not take pictures well. We put the phones on a shelf at 7. We picked Thursday as our sacred ordinary. No meetings past 5. No, just one more email. Only street suya. And the kind of conversations that start shallow, then grow legs. He told me about a client who cried at the counter because the bank had eaten her savings with fees. I told him about a clinic where a girl drew her pain on a paper because she could not make the words come. I listened to his silences until they turned into sentences. He learned the names of my co-workers without rolling his eyes at the ones who sent midnight messages. That is what repair looks like most days. 2 people washing rice in the same bowl. The water turning cloudy with all the stubbornness you have to rinse away. But the city held a memory of my violence, like a rumor it refused to swallow. The neighbor in the next compound greeted me with a new caution in her eyes, as if I walked with thunder tucked under my blouse. At the NGO, a colleague joked too softly. Don't cross a certu. Oh, the way people tease when they mean it. I laughed like I was fine, then went into the bathroom and stared at my face until I found the woman I recognized below the one the story had crowned with shame. I wrote Sita's name on a small paper and folded it. My spirit would not let me leave it there. I found her through the quiet channels women use when there is nothing left to say aloud. Not to confront, not to threaten, not to justify. I wanted to put a bandage on the universe where I had torn it. I met her in a small courtyard, behind a tailor's stand, the alley smelling of starch and dust and late sun. Her eye had healed, but the way she stood said some hurts keep standing, even when they should sit. I am not here to ask you to like me, I told her, my voice tasting of iron. I am here to say I was wrong. I mistook fury for strength. I will carry that mistake like water on my head for the rest of my life. She watched me, the way a dog watches an open hand, hope and memory wrestling. I placed an envelope between us. This is not hush. It is not payment. It is the beginning of a door. There's a catering training in La Tricunda that takes women who want new names for their days. If you choose it, I will pay quietly till you finish. If you don't, keep it and eat well while you decide. She did not touch the envelope. She touched the bench, the air, her own wrist. Then she nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was permission to move. I walked home lighter and heavier at the same time. You can regret the rain, while thanking it for washing the dust off the leaves. I told Ibrahima what I had done. He held my hand, as if it was the first time he noticed the small scar across my knuckle from childhood. A knife and a stubborn coconut. Thank you, he said, and I heard what he meant beneath it. Thank you for making us a future. We will not be afraid to remember. We went to see Imam Saho, not because we wanted religion to scold us, but because he is old in the way that makes you want to become a proverb yourself. He gave us sweet tea and a lesson that was also a story. When the calabash cracks, some run to the potter for a new one. Some take rope and tie. If they tie with fear, the rope will slip. If they tie with love and truth, the rope becomes part of the calabash's beauty. He looked at us over the rim of his cup. Tie well. Then he made us name 3 ways we betray each other without touching anyone else. I said, I betray us when I make work my God. He said, I betray us when I pretend I am okay, and then punish you for not reading my mind. We wrote them down, signed our names like a small treaty. He told us to put the paper where we brush our teeth. Every morning, I read mine while the sink ran, and I became less capable of lying to my own mouth. At home, we moved furniture, like we were rearranging the past. The guest room became a studio for our small joys. His keyboard with 3 missing keys that still believes it is a piano. My baskets of half-finished beadwork. The bed we had stained with shame, we cleaned and kept. Not as a shrine to pain, but as proof that wood can carry stories and still hold you while you sleep. I bought blue curtains because I was tired of the old color. He planted basil in the kitchen window because he wanted the house to smell like apologies you can eat. Some nights the old fear visits, like a mosquito that knows the one place your net does not cover. I would feel my throat harden, my palms go cold. I would want to rise and patrol the house of my past, like a guard who does not believe the dawn will come. In those moments, I learned to say out loud, "I feel the river rising." And he would answer, "Come sit on the higher ground." It became a code. He would bring water. I would bring the truth without the blade. We would wait together for the flood to pass. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we shouted, and then spent the evening stitching the hole we had just made. But more and more, we found the quiet first. Months passed, with the sound of new habits settling into their chairs. On a Sunday, we drove to the coast where old boats sleep like ancestors. We carried a thermos of attaya and a bag of mandazi, dusted with sugar, so fine it looked like a blessing. We wrote what we were keeping and what we were letting go on small shells, and threw them, one by one, into the patient mouth of the ocean. He wrote lies, and the water took it without ceremony. I wrote revenge, and the wave lifted and set it down again, as if to say, "Are you sure?" I threw it farther. Distance arrived. At work, I changed the way I was important. I began training others to carry the weight I used to pretend only my back could bear. I handed over night calls to a rota I helped design. I learned the word no and taught it to my calendar. I brought Ibrahima to a community clinic and watched him sit on a low stool, laughing with a boy who wanted to be a banker and a dancer. He brought me to his branch's financial literacy classes, and I watched him teach a woman to open an account with the tenderness of a midwife. We saw each other in our element and stopped resenting the light that made the other glow. Once, at the market, a woman I did not know called me Madam Thunder and laughed. I pressed my lips together until my name returned to me. I am Asatu. I wanted to say, I am a river that learned its banks. I am the sound of beans softening after a long boil. I am the after of a bad story and the before of a better one. On our anniversary, we invited only the people who would not clap for the wrong thing. We set a long table under our mango tree with mismatched chairs that looked like family. We told the truth in small, safe portions. We broke, he said, eyes steady on mine. We mended, I said, palm warm against his. The children from next door danced to a song that remembers everyone's childhood, and old aunties made a circle of ululations, so bright the moon stepped closer to listen. We cut cake and fed each other without playing. Later, when the house was full of empty plates and satisfied silence, he put his head in my lap and asked me for a story. I told him the one where the city is loud, but the house is louder with love. I told him the one where we don't forget how close we came to losing the language we speak to God with. I told him the one where a woman lays her weapons down and learns to hold a hand instead. Sometimes I think about the girl I was in that guest room doorway. The way my vision narrowed to a blade. The way the world became one small target I had to hit. I bless her for refusing to be erased. I forgive her for thinking pain needs witnesses to understand its size. I keep her in my pocket, the way you keep a warning you hope you never have to use. And sometimes I think about Cedar, stirring a pot in some other kitchen now, practicing a new recipe with hands that learned a hard lesson. I pray the steam rises around her like a soft choir. I pray she marries kindness, or better, becomes it. Tonight I cut onions and do not cry. The oil takes the heat with a small grateful sound. He walks in with a bag of oranges, their paws shining like the cheeks of children after play. You beat me home, he says, as if it is a race we will both keep losing and winning. I point to the calendar where next Thursday is circled twice. He smiles the smile that used to be rare. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a generator coughs itself awake. Somewhere closer, Our rice finishes steaming and waits. I set 2 plates like a prayer. He washes his hands like a promise. The city knocks on our window with its usual troubles, and we answer by lighting the stove, by laying the table, by choosing each other again in the small, stubborn ways that make tomorrow possible.